All right, hello class. Welcome to week 4. It's crazy that we're already, 4 weeks into the semester, but as you can see, we've really hit the ground running, and it looks like a lot of you, or in fact, I think all of you, are doing well in terms of keeping up with the assignments and making sure that you're staying on task. All right, so what I want to do today is I want to start to talk in detail about what Project 2 is. Now, you guys have been working towards this, the last 3 weeks. The research guide set you up so that you knew where to go to find articles that you'll need for Project 2. And then in your week 3 stuff, you started to do some summaries of the text you were going to read. And so now this is where we're really going to start to put all this together. And as you'll see here in a minute, we've got a draft of this Project 2 by the end of the week. And so what I want to do is I want to talk through the kind of weekly schedule. We'll talk through some of the reading a little bit, and then I want to walk through a sample that I've posted of Project 2 so you guys can kind of get a feel for it, as well as look at the rubric for this project so you guys know exactly what I'll be looking for. Now, in terms of week 4, this is really kind of the most kind of breakneck pace that we'll be at. After next week, it starts to settle down a little bit. But as you can see, we're really moving on this project too. And the reason why we're moving so quickly is because everything that you're doing is just building off of the stuff that you've already done. And so if you look at this, we've got a couple readings up for this week. We've got chapter 6 out of our Wadsworth Guide, Rhetorically Reading, Tracking, and Evaluating Sources. Now, what this is going to do is it's really going to help you figure out how to go about, kind of combing through the articles and the research that you gather to find, or to be kind of reading with a purpose, right? And that's kind of one of our learning objectives is reading with intent, reading with a purpose, and looking for things and annotating and things like that. And so this will help you kind of understand how to do that, and then also take a look at the sample, which we'll walk through as well. So the other things that we have on deck for this week, you've got a draft of Project 2. And we'll talk about that in a moment. And then, as with your last draft, I'm going to ask you guys to kind of read each other's drafts, post a few comments. I was really, really pleased with the comments that I did see on there. I know a lot of you took a little bit longer than you should have to get your drafts up there, but for the most part, I was very pleased with the feedback that I saw. A lot of you are giving really thoughtful comments and things like that, so thank you for that. And also, you've got your quiz up for this week. Okay, so before we start on the Project 2 stuff, just some housekeeping. I've got your Project 1's in, or your Project 1 assignments turned in. I will get those back to you this week, as well as your blog, so you have everything up to date by the end of the week. All right. So I want to return here real quick and just to kind of slow down and think about what Project 2 is, because by now you guys have done some research for this and you've probably done some brainstorming, but it seems, based on some of the emails that I've gotten, that you're still not quite sure what exactly Project 2 is all about. Now, the rationale behind Project 2, behind what we're calling a genre analysis, is that by doing this project, you will have a better sense of how people in your field are actually exchanging knowledge, right? Because the whole point of what we're doing here is to learn how people in your community communicate, how they achieve their goals. And one of the ways they do this is by exchanging knowledge through, published articles and things like that. And so what Project 2 asks you to do is it asks you to take a look at an example from your community and to start to pick out the structural details that make an article in your community tick. Now, if we think about what a genre is, we can think about different movie categories or book categories or things like that, where if I say the word, comedy or horror or, romance in terms of a movie or book, you have a preconceived notion about what those things mean. So if I said I saw a horror movie today, you can probably guess some of the elements of that movie. It was scary, probably had some kind of dark lighting, and probably had some moody music, things like that. Same thing if I said I saw comedy today, you guys can guess as to the basic elements that were probably involved, even if you don't know the movie. Because all of those movies in that genre share certain traits. And so that's how we're treating genre in this instance too. We're looking at the genre of the published academic and or professional article. And so just like those movie categories, the genre of the article has a set of conventions that exist across the board no matter what kind of things we're looking at, no matter which example we look at. And so what this project helps you do is it helps you figure out what are those conventions in relationship to your community, because each community is going to have articles that look a little bit different. And so last week I talked about, citation style being one of the things we can think about. From APA to MLA, those things are different, and they help us tell, or they help us understand that they come from different communities because those citation styles serve different needs. In English, MLA helps us understand who wrote something. In the sciences, APA helps us understand when something was published, because both of those things reflect the needs of those communities. Okay, so what this project will do is it'll help you pick out the structural elements, the conventions of the genre as they exist in your community. And so what you'll do then is you're going to be using an article from your community, and it can absolutely be the article that you summarized for blog 2. That's one of the reasons we do that. And you're going to be comparing it to one of the articles that we're reading for our class. So it could be the Wardle, could be any of the articles that we've read for our class. And the way that you'll do that is that you're going to break it down into 3 different stages. And so this is how we'll jump in right here. So this essay will be broken up into 3 sections, essentially, plus an introduction. Identification, analysis, and reflection. Now, each one of these sections will force you to focus in on particular elements of the assignment. So let's take a look. The identification section, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be literally combing through the article, step by step, and looking at the major structural elements of it and identifying them. So you'll see you're going to be identifying the major conventions found in the articles you selected. What citation styles are used? What major sections? Are there section headers? How are they identified and ordered? What sections are most extensively written? And so, for example, in the sciences, you might have like a hypothesis section with a method section after that and a kind of a conclusion. Whereas in English, we wouldn't see a hypothesis methods. And so what do we see there? Do we see active or passive voice? What kind of point of view? Is it first person, third person? Does the article have an abstract? Does the article include additional sections such as acknowledgments, epigraphs? Does it have a lot of quotes? What kind of sentence structure are we looking at? What kind of word choice are we looking at? Does it include graphs, charts, things like that? And so what I really want to stress here is we're not so much focused on the argument or what the authors are actually saying in this particular article, but our goal instead is to look at this one example and to identify the major structural elements of it, from which we can extrapolate some sort of general rules for the community. And so in other words, if I look at this one article from English and I see that it has, this element, and this element, then I can assume that these are kind of conventions that make the article in English tick. Okay. And so for this identification section, what you'll do is you will go through both articles, starting with your article, identify all the things that you see, then move on to the article from our class, identify all the things that you see. So then what you do is once you've got all this stuff here, that'll give you a lot to talk about, because then what you're going to be doing is you're going to be using that stuff as evidence to compare them. So in the analysis section, you'll analyze how these major conventions indicate the ways the genre supports the goals of the community or demonstrates the values of the community. So for example, if you notice that your article has an abstract, you could make some guesses as to why that might be. Like what point or what purpose does an abstract serve? Or if you see that there's different citation styles, you can make some guesses as to what those communities value. If it's APA versus MLA, right? We can guess that one values, recent scholarship, whereas one values, authorship, things like that. And so you'll do that for all of the major things that you identify. And so essentially, this is where you're pointing out all of the evidence that you want to talk about, and this is where you tell us what you think that means about those communities. What do these things tell you about these communities? And then finally, in the reflection section, this is where you're going to take a moment to think about what you've learned through doing this. What can you begin to say about discourse communities after having completed your analysis? How do genres help shape the values, goals of discourse communities in general? So in other words, you can think about okay, so I've got this article and it's serving this purpose. So what does this mean for the community? What role do these articles play in communities and things like that? And so again, identify the components, analyze what you think they mean by comparing them, and then reflect on what you learned. Okay. So now we can take a quick look, if we go to this week, we can take a quick look at the student sample. All right, so you can see here that this is a paper that a student wrote in Chris Suzak's class a couple of years ago. So if you've had Chris Suzak, you might be familiar with him. But so this is a sample genre analysis from Project 2 of 3010. And so we can take a look at the basic elements of the essay that we see here. So there's an introduction that's laying out the purpose for this assignment, which you should all do. And so in other words, we're not talking about what the article is actually saying. We're looking at what these communities are. We're identifying the communities that we're looking at, and we're starting to talk about, why you're going to be doing this genre analysis, what you hope to achieve. And then we move into the identification section. And I want you to use headers like this because it will help you organize your thoughts. And so we can see here we start with the article from this person's community, in this case, the supply chain management. And then we move into boom, we're starting to jump into the structure stuff. The title of the article, where's the title located, how's it organized? We've got summary, we've got a couple examples of the kind of word choice and things that we see. And then we're moving through the various other elements. We've got some section titles, things like that. And so throughout this, you'll notice that all we're looking at is the structure and the elements and the components of the article and not the argument of the article. Okay. And then we can see here we move into the article from our class. In this case, this student chose this article, and they're doing the same things for this this article. Now, I will say that this could have been a little bit longer, to kind of match the depth that went into with the other article. But again, it's doing all the right things. Okay, so when we get to the analysis section, we can see that they're going to take all of this stuff, and they're going to start to talk about the different things that they can infer out of this comparison. And so as you read through this, pay attention to how the author is using those things as evidence here. And finally, in reflection, we've got just kind of a brief personal reflection on what the author learned by doing this. And so as you'll see, it's not, it's really not an incredibly, difficult assignment. It seems like it is coming into it, but if you understand that all we're doing is we're comparing the stuff that you see, like looking at the page, what do you see? We're comparing those things from one article to another one. You can see that it goes pretty quickly. All right, now, there we go. Now, the last thing that I wanted to look at, there we go. Last thing I wanted to look at was, is the rubric for this assignment. Now, you can see the rubrics for any of our assignments if you go to the Dropbox. And so I'm on Project 2, Dropbox. Go over here, view the rubric. So you can see that these are the categories that I'll be grading on: basic content, identifying the conventions, so doing that identification section. I'll be looking at how well you do your analysis section. I'll be looking at the kind of things that you talk about in your reflection, organization, clarity, and professionalism. Okay, and so I just wanted to show this to you in case you get a little bit lost or you're concerned, you don't know what I'll be looking for. You've got all of the rubrics here. They're also on your syllabus. So at any time, you can always look and double check. All right, so just to recap then, guys, you've got a couple things to do for this week. Make sure you get that quiz done. Don't forget about that because those points add up. And then really focus in on getting a draft up by Friday. And I really want you guys to do it by Friday because your peers need the time to kind of go in and provide you feedback. Okay. So this week I'll go in and I'll put the Dropbox up for your peer groups. So you'll see a Project 2 peer review group on your groups as well. All right, guys, if you have any questions, obviously email me. I'm happy to do Skype conferences, all that jazz. So let me know if you need help, and I will have those Project 1s graded back to you very soon.